invitation to Mr. Trump. So far, he has not tweeted back. We're still waiting. With me now to talk about all of this, Katrina Rogers and Apostle Thomas Rogers. Both are Trump supporters and head up the Antioch Road to Glory International Ministries. Also with me, a CNN political commentator and former executive director of the Congressional Black Caucus and Clinton supporter, Angela Rye. Welcome to all of you.
Thank you, Carol.
Well, thank you, Carol.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much.
Pastor, do you think Mr. Trump should accept Rhymefest's invitation?
I didn't hear the last part of your question.
Rhymefest, who's a rapper, he has invited Mr. Trump to walk the streets of Chicago with him through black communities. Do you think he should accept that invitation?
I think so. Matter of fact, I think that African Americans, we don't need to make Mr. Trump our scapegoat. We need to stand up to the platform and do something for our community. And that's where that comes in, with a vision to help our people to have a better life. And I think all black ministers have turned their backs on their own people. And we look at Washington, D.C.
Wait a minute, you think all black
ministers?
Wait a minute, you think all black ministers have turned their backs on their congregations?
Of them have. I'm a living witness. Mega churches is only for most of single-parent women. And they're doing very little for their own community. Let's don't put the blame on Mr. Trump. And let's put it back on our own blacks. The NAACP, the Black Political Caucus. I've been in Washington, and I see how they walk the streets, the Ray Brown building, the Cannonsworth building, and they're doing absolutely nothing.
I want to go back to that point and ask Angela about that, because she was the former executive director of the Congressional Black Caucus. Do you feel that way, Angela, that black ministers have turned their backs on their largely African-American congregations, and all of the civic organizations out there have also turned their backs on black Americans?
Well, let me first address what the apostle said last, which was the Black Political Caucus, which I have no idea what that is. I worked for the Congressional Black Caucus, and I can tell you, having worked for the conscience of the Congress, and they earned that moniker more than 40 years ago for all of the work they've done for black people both here and abroad. So I have no idea whose back they've turned on. I've never heard of the apostle or his daughter or the great work that they may be doing in the North Carolina community. I certainly don't know where they were when William Barber was launching Moral Mondays to ensure that black people could retain and protect the right to vote. I also take issue with launching a full-on attack on black pastors and black organizations that have protected our rights and have ensured that our legislators, whether on the state or local or federal level, have also been accountable for protecting black rights, civil rights, wage parity, mass incarceration issues, criminal justice reform. I don't know where you were, Apostle, when these things were happening. Instead, you opt to use this particular platform and the one that you used in your church just recently to have a rally for Donald Trump. Now, I know you can do that because you don't have 501c3 status, but you're leading churches down a very dangerous road, because many of them could lose their tax exempt status for doing the same thing you've done.
Well, I want to ask Angela this question. So Donald Trump is going to go to Detroit later this week, and he's going to meet with a very popular black pastor there. That pastor says he's reserving judgment because this is the first time he has met Donald Trump, and he needs to talk to him face to face. Angela, have you or your father met Mr. Trump? Have you talked to him face to face?
Oh, you're talking to Katrina.
I'm sorry, I'm talking to Katrina.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Katrina. Have you or your father met Mr. Trump?
Actually, we have. We met with him on August the 18th when he came down to Charlotte, North Carolina, and did his town hall rally there. So we had a chance to go in the back and speak with him. And we had already given him information on some of the things that we would like to see him put on his agenda as it pertains to African Americans.
Did he present you with any sort of a plan to create jobs in your community or other African American communities throughout the country?
Well, he was very receptive, very warm. He was very present and in that moment. He assured us that he will be working towards cultivating a plan. What we wanted to do was to actually bring him the issues that we would like to see resolved. And so there was no actual plan made, but he made every effort to let us know that this will be an ongoing situation. He will be continuing to dialogue with people from all demographics so that we can come up with an actual plan that we can move forward with.
And Pastor, I need to ask you about something, because you have your own plan to create jobs for African Americans. You talk of dual citizenship. What do you mean by dual citizenship?
Well, thank you for the question. Dual citizenship, African Americans are the only people in the world do not seek dual citizenship. That's why Chicago gains, California gained the Crips and the Blood, and Detroit, Michigan, we have gangs in the street because blacks have no vision. They have no leadership. I understand.
What do you mean by dual citizenship? Because you've also talked about building a road back to Africa. Can you explain that for us?
Yes, I can. Thank you for the question. Matter of fact, where our ancestors came from the Indian Ocean all the way across to the Atlantic Ocean, that is 4,000 miles. And we wanted to go back and help build highways all the way across to create jobs, train rails, pipelines, oil, petroleum. They create jobs for young people, can't find jobs here that the Democrats had not did. And I think it will give young people in prison, just like Great Britain did it. And I was in Great Britain a few years ago.
So what you're suggesting, just so I can be clear, what you're suggesting is that African Americans living here who are in trouble should go back to Africa, perhaps to find jobs?
Not to go back to, but I'm saying return. It's a clause in the United Nations Charter, a right to return, to help build infrastructure, to give young people something to do. Everybody don't want to stay here. We are skilled people. We help.
So
President
Angela
Jefferson. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just wanted to get Angela's take on your idea to create jobs.
So I guess I'm confused. I'm not sure if you're talking about building a literal bridge back to Africa, or you're talking about working on actual infrastructure to build roads in Africa. If you're talking about building a bridge back to Africa, I think that's probably impossible. I apologize for laughing, but I'm not quite sure which engineer you met that with. But so I'm sorry. Okay, so in terms of, creating jobs in Africa, I think that's admirable. I just would encourage you to talk to candidates that actually have legitimate ideas as opposed to the one you've endorsed, Donald Trump.
Okay, well,
yes.
I have to leave it there. Angela Rye, Katrina Rogers, and Apostle Thomas Rogers, thanks to